Time felt loose in Rome, as if the days could slip through your fingers. For generations, the city lived with a calendar that wandered away from the seasons. Spring rites drifted toward winter skies, harvest festivals arrived too early or too late, and priests adjusted months in ways that served politics more than people. Imagine being a farmer who looks at the vines and knows the grapes are ready, yet the calendar insists the harvest is still far off. Or a family preparing a sacred feast, only to find that the appointed day has stepped out of step with nature. Life was measured in guesses and corrections, and each year the gap grew wider. Then came a man who had seen the world beyond Rome and carried its lessons home. Julius Caesar returned from Egypt with more than victories and stories. He had watched the sun-watching scholars of the Nile track the year with astonishing steadiness. Their sense of time moved with the sky itself. Caesar looked at Rome's restless days and felt a quiet conviction that a city so ambitious should not be ruled by a drifting calendar. He set out to align human days with the patient path of the sun. The plan was bold, not because it shouted, but because it listened. It listened to the length of the solar year, which is a little longer than 365 days. It listened to the farmers and sailors and families who needed dates that made sense with rains and tides and migrations. With the help of the learned Sosigenes of Alexandria, Caesar shaped a simple promise: a year of 365 days, plus a small correction every 4 years. That extra day would be a kind of handshake with the sky, an honest nod to the quarter day we usually overlook. But repairing time meant more than drafting rules. First, Rome had to be brought back into sync with the seasons. The old gaps had to be closed. So the year before the new system began stretched longer than any Roman could remember. Days kept being added to pull the calendar back toward spring, summer, autumn, and winter where they belonged. People joked, people complained, and people marveled as the year seemed to refuse to end. Yet beneath the grumbling, there was relief. The festivals were returning to their rightful places. The countryside felt close again. Then came a crisp morning when the air seemed newly scrubbed. It was the first day of January in the year 45 before Christ. Rome woke to a calendar that began clean and clear. Market sellers chalked fresh numbers on their stalls. Priests set their feast days with quiet confidence. Farmers planned sowing and harvest by a rhythm that matched the sun. Time felt trustworthy. Curiously, even this new order stumbled at first. Some officials, still learning the pattern, added the leap day too often. The adjustment intended for every 4 years started arriving every 3. It did not take long for Augustus to step in and settle the matter, spacing the leap days correctly and letting the calendar breathe again. It is a small reminder that even a good system needs careful hands. What changed next was subtle but enormous. Across provinces and seas, people could agree on dates. Contracts traveled safely from one town to another. Armies marched with schedules that made sense in winter and summer alike. Scholars in far-off libraries wrote to one another about eclipses and comets, and they knew they were pointing to the same night sky. The calendar had become more than a tool. It was a shared language. There are quiet wonders tucked into this story. Astronomers later built a method of counting days that reaches far back into deep history, starting from a distant point thousands of years before Christ. It is a way to keep track of time without confusion, and it hints at how deeply Caesar's reform shaped the habits of thinkers. And those centuries brought refinements, with a pope in the 16th century gently adjusting the calendar to catch tiny errors that had slipped in, the heart of Caesar's design still beats beneath our months and years. Think about how this touches your life. Every birthday you mark, every new year you welcome, every extra day in a leap year that feels like a small gift, all of it carries a trace of that Roman decision to meet the sun honestly. It is not the tale of a conqueror breaking the world to his will. It is the tale of a city learning to listen to the sky, of a leader borrowing wisdom and giving it a place in daily life. So as we begin this journey through the Julian calendar, Let yourself picture the streets of ancient Rome at dawn, the shopkeepers lifting their shutters, the children running across stone courtyards, the farmers reading the season in the wind. Time is not only numbers on a page, it is a rhythm we share. And when it finally found its beat in Rome, the world stepped a little closer to harmony. If this kind of story speaks to you, if you enjoy seeing how human choices shape the way we live today, remember to like the video, share it with a friend who loves history, and subscribe to Legacy of Empires. There are so many more quiet revolutions to explore together. Picture this. You're a Roman citizen in the 1st century before Christ, and you wake up expecting spring to arrive, but winter refuses to leave. The cherry blossoms that should be blooming in March are nowhere to be seen, and the harvest festivals are happening when the crops are barely planted. This wasn't just an inconvenience. It was absolute chaos. For centuries, Rome relied on what we call the Roman Republican calendar, and honestly, calling it broken would be generous. This lunar-based system was like trying to catch sunlight with a fishing net. The Romans started with a 10-month year. Can you imagine that? Their calendar began in March, which is why December literally means 10th month, even though we know it as the 12th. But here's where things get really wild. The Roman priests, called pontifices, had the power to add extra days or even whole months whenever they felt like it. And guess what? They didn't always do it for the right reasons. Sometimes they'd shorten a political opponent's term by skipping days, or extend their allies' time in office by adding a few extra weeks. It was like having referees who could change the rules of the game while it was being played. As the years rolled by, this calendar became more and more disconnected from reality. Think about trying to plan your life when you never knew if next month would have 28 days or 45. Farmers couldn't predict the right time to plant their crops. Merchants struggled to plan trade routes. Religious festivals meant to celebrate the spring equinox were happening in the dead of winter. By the time Julius Caesar returned from his campaigns in Gaul, the situation had become ridiculous. The calendar was running a full 80 days behind the actual seasons. Imagine celebrating New Year's in what should have been March. The sun and the calendar were living in completely different worlds, and Roman society was paying the price. Now Caesar wasn't just a brilliant military commander, he was also incredibly observant. During his time in Egypt, particularly his famous relationship with Cleopatra, he witnessed something remarkable, a calendar that actually worked. The Egyptians had figured out that the year was approximately 365 days long, not the shifting, unpredictable mess that Rome was dealing with. The Egyptian system was elegant in its simplicity. They watched the star Sirius, which they called Sothis, and noticed it appeared in the same position every 365 days. They built their entire agricultural and religious life around this celestial clock, and it served them well for thousands of years. Caesar realized that Rome needed this kind of precision. He couldn't conquer the known world and then come home to a calendar that couldn't even tell him what season it was. The time had come, literally, to revolutionize how Romans thought about time itself. What's fascinating is how this calendar chaos affected ordinary people's lives. Imagine being a baker who needed to prepare for religious festivals, but you never knew when they would actually occur. Picture farmers trying to decide when to plant their wheat, knowing that the official spring month might actually fall during what felt like winter. Soldiers returning from long campaigns would find that the home they left in summer was now celebrating winter festivals, even though the weather felt like autumn. Letters took months to travel across the empire, and by the time they arrived, the dates they mentioned were meaningless because the calendar had shifted yet again. This wasn't just about administrative convenience. It was about the rhythm of human life itself. People need predictability, seasons to mark the passage of time, festivals that actually align with the natural world. Rome's broken calendar was breaking the very foundation of how people understood their place in the year, and Caesar knew that fixing time itself was just as important as conquering new territories. When Caesar returned to Rome, he didn't just bring back gold and glory, he brought back an idea that would outlast any military victory. He summoned the greatest minds of his time, including a brilliant Greek astronomer named Sosigenes of Alexandria. Picture these two men, the most powerful ruler in the world and one of its greatest scientific minds, sitting together and essentially trying to redesign time itself. Sosigenes had spent his life studying the heavens, tracking the sun's journey across the sky with mathematical precision. He explained to Caesar something that seems simple to us now but was revolutionary then. The Earth takes approximately 365 and 1/4 days to complete its journey around the sun. That extra quarter day, just 6 hours, was the source of all the chaos. The solution was elegant in its simplicity. Create a calendar with 365 days, then every 4th year, add 1 extra day to account for those accumulated quarter days. We call this the leap year today, and it was Caesar's genius to recognize that this small adjustment could bring order to the entire Roman world. But implementing this new system required something unprecedented in human history. Caesar declared that the year 46 before Christ would have 445 days. Think about that for a moment, an entire year that lasted nearly 15 months. Romans called it the year of confusion, and you can imagine why. Citizens woke up day after day watching their calendars stretch on endlessly. Merchants had to completely rethink their contracts. Farmers found themselves planting and harvesting in what felt like an eternal cycle. But Caesar understood that sometimes, to fix something completely broken, you have to break it even more before you can rebuild it properly. The genius of this extended year wasn't just in its length, it was in its purpose. Caesar was essentially pressing a cosmic reset button, forcing the calendar to catch up with the sun after centuries of drift. When that extraordinary year finally ended, Rome would wake up to a New Year's Day that actually aligned with the natural world. On January 1st in the year 45 before Christ, something magical happened. For the first time in generations, the Roman calendar matched the seasons. Spring would arrive when the calendar said it would. Harvest festivals would happen during actual harvest time. The priests could no longer manipulate time for political gain because the system was now based on the unchanging rhythm of the sun itself. But here's where the story takes an almost comedic turn. Even with Caesar's brilliant system in place, human error found a way to creep back in. After Caesar's assassination, the Roman priests who maintained the calendar made a crucial mistake. They thought every 4th year meant every 3 years, so they started adding leap days too frequently. For decades, the calendar slowly began drifting again, though not nearly as badly as before. It took Caesar's heir, Augustus, to notice the error and correct it. He actually had to skip several leap years to get the calendar back on track. Imagine being the emperor who had to announce, "Sorry everyone, but this year we're going to pretend February doesn't have an extra day, even though it should." What Caesar created wasn't just a calendar. It was a new relationship between humanity and time. Before the Julian system, time felt arbitrary, controlled by priests and politicians. After Caesar, time became predictable, mathematical, almost scientific in its reliability. The leap year concept was so revolutionary that it's easy to forget how brilliant it was. Caesar essentially figured out how to synchronize human civilization with the cosmos. Every 4 years we add 1 day to keep our human-made system aligned with the natural world. It's like having a conversation between Earth and humanity, where we adjust our counting to match the planet's rhythm. This calendar became so successful that it spread far beyond Rome's borders. As the empire expanded, so did Caesar's way of measuring time. From Britain to Egypt, from Spain to Syria, people began living their lives according to the Julian system. It became one of the most successful exports of Roman civilization, more enduring than their roads, their laws, or even their language. Are you fascinated by this ancient legacy? Then comment your thoughts. Like the video, share it with fellow history lovers, and subscribe to Legacy of Empires for more epic journeys. Here's something that will blow your mind. Caesar's calendar didn't just survive the fall of Rome, it thrived for over 1,600 years after his death. While empires rose and fell, while languages changed and borders shifted, Caesar's way of counting days marched steadily forward, becoming the heartbeat of Western civilization. The Byzantine Empire, which considered itself the continuation of Rome, naturally kept Caesar's calendar alive in the East. But what's truly remarkable is how far this system traveled. Viking raiders sailing the stormy North Sea used Caesar's months to plan their expeditions. Medieval knights heading to the Crusades synchronized their journeys using a calendar created by a Roman dictator they'd probably never heard of. Even more incredible, the Russian Empire clung to the Julian calendar until 1918, long after most of the world had moved on. When the Russian Revolution happened, they were still living in Caesar's time, 13 days behind the rest of Europe. Imagine the confusion when Russian delegates arrived at international meetings and had to constantly calculate what day it actually was for everyone else. Fast forward to the 16th century after Christ, when a quiet observation in a monastery would change everything once again. Church scholars had noticed something troubling. Easter was slowly drifting earlier and earlier in the year. The problem wasn't dramatic, just about 11 minutes per year, but over centuries, those minutes had accumulated into days. Pope Gregory XIII faced a dilemma that would have made Caesar proud. The Julian calendar, brilliant as it was, had a tiny flaw. That quarter day wasn't exactly 6 hours. It was about 11 minutes shorter. Over the course of 1,600 years, those 11 minutes had added up to 10 full days of drift. The Pope gathered the best minds of his time, just as Caesar had done. They calculated that to bring the calendar back in line with the seasons, they would need to simply skip 10 days. So in October of 1582, people went to bed on October 4th and woke up on October 15th. 10 days just vanished from history, erased with the stroke of a papal decree. But here's where the story gets really interesting. Not everyone was ready to give up Caesar's calendar. The Catholic world quickly adopted Gregory's refinement, but Orthodox Christianity held firm to the Julian system. This created something almost magical, two different times existing simultaneously in the same world. Even today, if you visit certain Orthodox communities, you'll find people celebrating Christmas 13 days after the rest of the world. They're not being stubborn or traditional. They're honoring a different relationship with time, one that traces directly back to Caesar's original vision. Their January 7th Christmas is actually December 25th on the Julian calendar. It's like having two different rivers of time flowing side by side, each carrying its own traditions, its own rhythm, its own understanding of when sacred moments should occur. This isn't just about dates on a page. It's about how communities choose to connect with the passage of time and the cycles of their faith. Now here's something that will surprise you. Astronomers today still use a system inspired by Caesar's reforms, though most people have never heard of it. The Julian day system counts every single day since January 1st, 4,713 years before Christ. Today, as we speak, we're living in Julian day number 2,460,000 and something. Why would modern scientists use such an ancient system? Because sometimes the old ways are the best ways. When you're tracking celestial events across centuries or trying to calculate exactly when an eclipse happened in ancient Babylon, you need a counting system that never resets, never changes, never gets confused by different calendar reforms. Every time astronomers discover a new comet or calculate the orbit of a distant planet, they're using a descendant of Caesar's innovation. The same mathematical precision that brought order to Roman chaos now helps us navigate the cosmos. Caesar wanted to align Rome with the sun. Today, his legacy helps us understand distant stars. Take a moment and think about this. Every time you glance at your phone to check the date, you're using a system that a Roman dictator created over 2,000 years ago. When you celebrate New Year's Eve on January 1st, you're honoring Caesar's decision to move the beginning of the year from March to the depths of winter. When you mark your birthday, you're counting days in a rhythm that Caesar established. Even our leap years carry his fingerprints. Every 4th February, when we add that extra day, we're performing a ritual that connects us directly to ancient Alexandria, where Sosigenes first calculated the sun's precise journey. That leap day isn't just a calendar quirk. It's a bridge across millennia, linking our modern lives to Caesar's vision of order. The Julian calendar didn't just organize time, it democratized it. Before Caesar, Time belonged to priests and politicians who could manipulate it at will. After Caesar, time became something predictable, something ordinary people could trust. A farmer in Gaul could plan his harvest with the same confidence as a merchant in Rome, because they all shared the same understanding of when winter would end and spring would begin. What's most remarkable about this story isn't just that Caesar fixed a broken system, it's how he thought about the problem. He didn't try to patch the old calendar or make small adjustments. He looked at the fundamental relationship between human society and the natural world, then rebuilt that relationship from the ground up. This teaches us something profound about innovation. Sometimes the most lasting solutions come not from complicated technologies, but from simple ideas applied with courage and precision. Caesar's calendar worked for 16 centuries, not because it was perfect, but because it was honest about what time actually is. The Earth's journey around the sun, measured and divided in ways that human society could understand and use. Think about the humility required for this achievement. Caesar was the most powerful man in his world, yet he recognized that he needed to learn from Egyptian wisdom and Greek mathematics. He could have forced Romans to live with their chaotic calendar simply because changing it would be difficult and expensive. Instead, he chose to invest in a solution that would benefit people he would never meet, living in centuries he would never see. Today, as we navigate our busy lives with smartphones and digital calendars, we're still walking in Caesar's footsteps. Our work weeks, our holiday seasons, our understanding of when spring arrives, all of this flows from decisions made in ancient Rome by people who understood that organizing time well is one of the greatest gifts one generation can give to the next. The next time you enjoy the predictability of knowing exactly when your vacation starts or when you can count on the seasons changing, remember that this reliability is not natural or automatic. It's the result of human beings who cared enough about the future to wrestle with chaos and create order, even when that meant enduring their own year of confusion to get there. Caesar's calendar reminds us that some of humanity's greatest achievements aren't monuments or conquests. They're the quiet systems that make ordinary life possible, generation after generation, century after century. In organizing time, Caesar didn't just rule his empire, he gave a gift to every empire that would follow. What lessons can we draw from this ancient tradition? Tell us in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Legacy of Empires for more untold stories of the ancient world.